Hey, it's Glenn and welcome back to the Cactus Atlas. Have you ever wondered who lived here before us in Phoenix, Arizona? Well, if you have, we're going to take a journey today through an urban setting, finding remnants of the past. So I'm in a neighborhood in the very north of Phoenix in an area known as Deer Valley. I can hear the roar of the freeway right out there. I think the 101. The sun's facing this way, but there are neighborhoods galore. We're just in the suburbs here, and there's this place that many probably haven't heard of called Deer Valley Petroglyph Preserve. And I've been here one time before for like a college project, but it's a museum and evidence of the past. All right, the price of admission has been paid, and I'm walking through this museum and learning about who made the petroglyphs and who were these people that were here before us. And the name that I learned today that's really more the more proper term to describe the people that left all these artifacts was the Ancestral Sonoran Desert People. And I've been calling them the Hohokam in all of our episodes over and over. So I'm gonna start trying to correct myself. I'm kind of in the habit of that, but I've been doing a lot of reading recently, trying to get better about this, and we saw potsherds on our recent adventure in Agua Fria, and a lot of the pottery seemed to have the same kind of coloration. No designs on it, but like a red pattern, and I've been reading the style of pottery is known as red on buff, as you could see there, and these are really cool examples. It's like now that I'm learning about this, it's really cool to see this in person. One of the interesting things already off the bat is I came here looking for answers about what do some of these petroglyphs and etchings mean, and maybe there's more info out there, but as the exhibit here pretty much says, we can never really know. In our modern ways, we don't know what their world meant to them. So the example they talk about would be deer. See a lot of deer etchings. So if you see two deer, is it a clan sign? Does it mean that there were deer in the area and they were hunting? Does it represent quickness and swiftness? So we could never really know what that means, but that's the point. So I don't know if we're gonna find all the answers today, which I like, because I like the mystery. So right out back here, it's really even hard to see from the parking lot. You can already see like all of these rocks. There's so many back here. Very perfect, I would say, for etching petroglyphs. I believe the trail is about a quarter mile long too, and we're now just getting started. So we're gonna basically walk down and then come back. There's a little loop at the end. So see, I came here looking for answers and they're asking me, what do these look like? I see, like, to me, if that's what we're talking about, I mean, it could just be some kind of abstract geometry, or maybe I would say like a centipede would be my guess, because they have them out here. Maybe it's a warning saying there are centipedes out here. That's also a symbol that I see a lot, those swirly things, and that's very common. Like maybe the one that always sticks out, and I always don't know what that means. It almost seems kind of like a water kind of symbol at times. Maybe, I don't know. I always wonder, does that mean there's a spring nearby? But somebody I think once said maybe it means it's like a place of emergence or represents something more spiritual. Like, I don't know. What do you guys think? I presume they found all these here in this area, but I was reading about the people here, and apparently one fact that's interesting about these people is because they ground all of their like grain, beans, corn, stuff like that, and these things, like little bits of rock, would come with it, so their teeth would get ground down, like, and they said that by 20 years old, evidence showed, like when they would find remains, that these people had the teeth of like a 70-year-old. So yeah, I mean, that would suck, because this is such an amazing society, but there's always got to be some trade-off, right? Teeth. All right, here's a perfect example of what I mean, and something we just talked about. Check this out. Concentric circles. Basically, they're saying we don't know what they really mean, but it's a very common symbol that we see, and I keep saying that. I know we see that all the time. It's always around. So what does it mean? Let's go surmise. I give you concentric circles and little spiral things. What does it all mean? And I've seen comments here and there on our channel and other places where people, and I'm sure they'll do it here, claim to know very definitively what some of these things might mean, and you know, if there's evidence or whatever, I'm very scientific, objective. Share it, and you know, I would love to hear more because it's so fascinating to me. I think it would really be interesting to get to know and talk to people of the like the cultures here and just see what their take is on this, because they are thought to be the ones that are the descendants of these people. And it's always talked about that they just all disappeared mysteriously, like in the 13th century or something around that area. And that doesn't really make complete sense, you know, and there are tribes still in the area, so that do make claims to that ancestry, and you see similarities in some of these cultures in their basket weaving, sometimes exactly like what these old cultures did. So to me, it's pretty clear they really didn't go anywhere. They're still around. All right, now down past the spirals, it's kind of overgrown now. So I think the main course, the grand finale, isn't far, if I remember correctly, where we can zoom in with my other camera and see a whole host of these things all over the place. Yes, I can tell here, I'm starting to see the little implements that will help line up your field of vision to point you to these petroglyphs. I'm probably gonna have to get my other camera out with a zoom lens so you can see them, but already I'm seeing them all over. You know, they're saying look up about 20 feet, it's saying, probably about right there. And you see those squigglies? Are those snake symbols? Are they just like AC/DC lightning bolts? Or the equivalent of whatever that was in their time? Well, I don't know. But maybe it represented a family, or maybe that was their like mark, the family crest. Apparently this is volcanic rock, but it's 10 million years old. And it is true that the darker covering on the outside is this crust called desert varnish. So naturally the stones wouldn't have been that dark, but over time and chemical reactions, that happens. Oh, here's some close-up ones. And there's the two deer. Remember, I think I was talking about two deer, and they're like facing each other. So what would that mean? You know, to me, you know, maybe that's a clan name or something, like Clan of the Two Deer. That's a really good guess, I would say. You know, I don't know. Or maybe there are mule deer. There are deer here in Phoenix, in this area, so maybe this designates the types of animals one might see in the area. Who knows? I even see like what I believe are coyotes, I would guess. It looks dog-like to me. Maybe even like, that's almost like a mountain lion if you look at the tail. And they probably have that up here, especially back then, before all of this human settlement here. I was honestly coming here today looking for my answers because I was doing internet research and not satisfied with what I found about what these symbols mean, like the swirls, all of the stuff. And I actually think I like it better that there are no answers. I think it makes it more interesting and mysterious. Another really fascinating thing that they talk about in there is some of these, it's not all from like what we call the Hohokam or the Ancestral Sonoran Desert People today. Some of this goes back thousands of years, they think. Maybe they're thinking maybe 3,000 years even. Some maybe even older, but probably more likely around 3,000 year old. There's different styles of abstractness and things that kind of demonstrate different cultures from different times. The early ones would have been hunter-gatherers, not really settling their roots down in one place, like the Ancestral Sonoran Desert People did, but you have a whole history of it. And I even think there's some people that were out towards the deserts, towards San Diego, that migrated in the area that left their marks here too. So 3 different major cultural traditions from all throughout time have left their mark here. Another interesting theory is that the petroglyphs were used for wayfinding, you know, because keep in mind, these people didn't have Google Maps, right? So maybe if you had to give directions, you would be like, you know, turn right at the squigglies and then make a left at the double human looking figure thing. Yeah, I would love to talk about this with all of you guys. Let's go get some coffee and discuss. There's an audio tour like for the trail too, by the way, and like pamphlets and maps. So you can learn, and you know, if I were to take more time, if I had more time, because we've got more stops on this journey today, I would dig a little bit deeper. But I just want to give you a taste. That's all. All right, hopefully I whetted your appetite and thirst for knowledge, and you want more. You've now seen the marks of the people that once made this place home, the same people whose feet walked all over your property, I guarantee you, at some point. Now let's go see what these people looked like. What were they doing out here? How do they survive in a desert without air conditioning and all of the McDonald's and Burger Kings that we have today? That's what I want to get to the bottom of. So it's time to hit the road. Here we are on one of man's modern marvels, an interstate system. Interstate 17 heading south towards Phoenix, Arizona, from the northern part of this fine city. And it just makes me kind of chuckle. I chuckle at the irony of this episode, because usually you're out with me exploring the old back dirt roads, and today we're exploring the pavement. You gotta wonder what the ancestral Sonoran Desert People would have thought if you could transport them here to see this. Thinking to the people of that time, or those times, being transported here into the car next to me to see this, assuming that we get them acclimated, maybe give them a couple months to get used to this crazy stuff here, and the skyline of Phoenix, Arizona off to the right, downtown Phoenix. Would they want to stay, or would they want to go back? I wonder. And today you're getting a double feature. You got to see Interstate 17 and now Interstate 10. Two interstates that I'm sure people that live in Phoenix are like, I don't want to see it. I have to live this nightmare every day. But I guarantee you, as much as Phoenicians complain about traffic, those that know and are from other areas of the country know that we don't have it too bad here, in my opinion. Although it's getting worse. All right, we have arrived at Pueblo Grande Museum, right here in the center of Phoenix. I can hear planes taking off, I think, from Sky Harbor Airport. Big jets. I hear the sound of freeways and just general city traffic. And it's just such a strange setting. It's not usual, My mind's having a hard time with this because we're usually out in peace and quiet, out in the middle of nowhere. This is a really amazing map of the Salt River area here in Phoenix, and it shows you all of the various sites, the ones that have platform mounds, the ones that had pueblo structures, ball courts, all over the place here in Phoenix. You could see how extensive the network of villages and residences were. I mean, I don't know if all of these are still, visible today. Probably not. And you can see all of the canals, thousands of miles of canals these people dug for farming. If you don't believe me, look. The history of the ancestral Sonoran Desert People spans from, according to this, about 450 AD, 450. I've heard as far back as 200 in some of the things I've read, but there are different periods of time. The fall of the Roman Empire was about this time, just to put it in perspective. And you have the pioneer period, the colonial period, the sedentary period, and the classic period. And I presume this is a scale model of what this would have looked like and what similar compounds would have looked like back in the day. Yep, so right outside the back of the museum is this foundation on which these pueblos were built, Pueblo Grande. And you saw like the scale model in there. If that's what this represented, this was huge, really sizable. And this is a fitting place for the sign as we look at a modern canal here in Phoenix that transports water from regions north for the very same reasons why these people had to do it. And I think some of the modern canals are actually built on locations of old canals. So even today in the modern times, we bring water in here using the places, the things these people started all those hundreds of years ago. As we said many times, and as many of you have probably already read, there's really no explanation for why this particular culture just kind of seemed to fizzle out. in the 13th century, something around there. I read 13th, 14th century. It's a mystery. As we mentioned, we don't think they went far. We think they're cultures today, but there were droughts. I think the Great Drought of the 1200s is thought to have contributed to the demise of this, year after year of rain or no rain, and then running out of their surplus supplies. We saw storage jars in there. They were masters at saving for, years out in case crops didn't grow as successfully year after year, as were the Chacoan people that we've studied before. But one has to wonder still. Here we are at the northeast corner of the platform mound that we mentioned earlier, and this is one of the best preserved walls of this sort that you can find, and it's the largest of 95 examples of this that you could find in Arizona, 25% of which are in the Salt River Valley. And here we are, having climbed up to the top, basically the top, not quite the top, but close enough, on top of the platform mound, and you can see it's pretty sparsely populated today, not too many visitors. We're starting to get a glimpse of some cool things. And although not as grand as something at Chaco Canyon, I mean, this really does, if you use your imagination a little bit and think of like that scale model again and what it looked like, and then apply that thinking to just seeing things like this, you can kind of start to fill out a picture in your head if you really allow yourself to. Isn't that funny to study this with me and see the freeway in the background and hear the jumbo jets and to see them taking off? I don't know if the irony is humorous to anybody else or interesting. It's just, I don't know. I'm finding it funny. This sign says this may have been a special use room, and they found things like seashells and different handcrafted items like made of deer antlers and stuff in here, and there were zigzag painted designs on one of the nearby doors here. Oh, neat. You could not tell that this was right on the other side when we were walking earlier down the path that way. This is huge. This was of course, their swimming pool. I'm kidding. Here's a sign or a rendition, I think, of what they're saying was below. I mean, this was all part of a big compound, basically. So these would have been other rooms and things that would have existed alongside of this. So if we were here, what the sign is saying is this place would have been a maze, like quite literally, almost a purposeful maze of all these complexes and rooms. What I really like is being here in the space, where the only thing separating me from what was going on here is time. And just thinking of it that way, and then trying to get the sound of jumbo jets out of my imagination as I think about that, and I try to envision what it would have looked like if I could have just planted myself here 800 years ago. Welcome to the suburbs of the Hohokam people, circa 1300. This is probably very much what the Pueblo that we just explored, the ruins, would have looked like, with this stuff called caliche, which is some kind of like substrata deposit of clay and dirt that they used like as cement to build these outer veneers of these things. So we get to go explore the replicas, and this is what you really need to have in mind when we think about these people, not the ruins that we just explored. Now here's an example of a room and what you may have expected. And really, if you've been with us on our travels, this is not unlike at all what you would see, like the roofing style of other cultures, like the ancestral Puebloan cultures, sister cultures that even migrated out to this area. So makes you really wonder, did the Hohokam, the Ancestral Sonoran Desert People, learn these techniques from those that came from the Chaco Canyon area, like the Salado? When you really put the rubble aside and you can envision and see what it would have been like, I don't think it would have been that uncomfortable. I think it would have stayed nice and cool in structures like this in the summer. I've been in similar things, and it really does help cool things down. And look at that example of the red on buff pottery, presumably a replica. And cotton, one of the crops we had mentioned, they actually learned how to grow in later periods next to what I think is a loom. Yeah, it just feels like almost, you see modern homes in Phoenix that use the same exact style. Walls like that for their yards, about the same height, You know, it's just funny because we really like emulate this culture in modern times here in our neighborhoods in Phoenix. So hopefully you're starting to get a better picture of what these people were like. One of the theories I read from a paper I was reading was that the Salado Indians that were part of the ancestral Puebloan culture, or was thought to have come from there, settled in nearby regions, not for a very long time. They came and built things like Tonto National Monument that we know today, but you know, some think that they melded into this culture, or maybe taught and shared their architectural practices, which were more like this, because before that, I think the Hohokam lived in pithouses and probably things more along these lines. These are fantastic because I've seen like the foundations of these where the tree poles would have gone in, but I've never seen a replica that I can remember anyway to really envision like what do they actually look like. So it's a lot different than I was thinking, actually. Yeah, look at that. It's kind of ironic we say they had to build these things because there wasn't a lot of wood, but look what I see, it's all wood. And this is absolutely beautiful. I mean, this is, you know, you'd have to presume this is based on archaeological evidence, and it does match things we saw, like not that long ago at Montezuma Well, they had that pit house structure where you saw the holes where the supports would have gone, oval in shape, just like this, albeit larger. And you saw renditions of what it would have looked like on the inside in a cross section, and this was basically it. So neat. We actually can go in one of these things and experience this. Not at all what I had in mind. So much more sophisticated, to me anyway. And just like the very rare remains we've seen of these like foundations, for lack of a better term, you do see like that outer like little stub, the wall there. Maybe they would sit on that. And another area there presumably for fire making. And I don't think there would have been a big door, a gaping door on the side of the real thing. This would have been completely enclosed. And then they would have come in through small openings like that. Interestingly, later on, they would come in through the ceilings through a system of ladders a lot of the time. So that's maybe another trait they picked up from some of the ancestral Puebloan cultures later on. I assume we are to believe this is the construction techniques that they would have used. So they knew how to do stuff. They knew how to do stuff very well. Oh, I think I actually see a ball court, something I've wanted to see for so long. In fact, I think I have seen one and didn't realize it. I was up in Agua Fria, a place called Pueblo La Plata. Came up to this big hole in the ground thinking, oh, maybe that's just modern diggings or whatever. I think I even said in the video, oh, is this a ball court? I think Amy and I discovered later it was, and I was so disappointed. I was like, I could have talked about that. But I think we have one right here. One of the things the Ancestral Sonoran Desert People, aka the Hohokam, were really big into was some kind of sport that they played in these like oval shaped ball courts. So if you live in Phoenix, you've probably heard of these things, thought to have been inspired by cultures south from Mexico, like Mesoamerican cultures. So that's what you see here, I think, are either the remains or a recreation maybe of one, but the museum did say they uncovered 6 of these things here. So this would give you an idea of the size of it, but it almost looks like concrete in there. So I might lean towards this might be a recreation because it's so well formed, but let's see. Well, the sign confirms it. Apparently this ball court, or sunken patio as they're known too, is very unique. It was excavated, so that means this is a real one. Very well preserved, and you don't really see them like this is what the sign is saying. So I think this is an exceptional example of one of these ball courts. All right, well that's Pueblo Grande Museum. We're not done yet, don't go anywhere, but I've wanted to come see this for a while, and I'm so glad that I did. If you really want to visualize what these people were like, this is a great place to do it. Maybe one of the best places I've been to yet for that. All right, we are departing Pueblo Grande to go to another Grande, Casa Grande Ruins National Monument. They are related in that that's another ruin of these people. Pretty spectacular one too, I hear. Okay, so I finally escaped the urban settings of Phoenix, and we've gotten far enough outside the city where there ain't no city anymore. It's just this beautiful specimen of the Sonoran Desert. Lush saguaro cacti, beautiful mountains, boulders, stuff I like. Really getting excited too because this is a national monument we're going to go visit today, one that I've never visited, so another one to cross off the list for me. And it's supposed to be one of the most fantastic specimens of Hohokam ruins around. So there's a particular structure that I think this place is known for. We survived all of that travel through the city and finally set foot here at Casa Grande National Monument, and this is already much cooler than I thought it would look like in person. This is basically, I think, another complex, not unlike the one we just saw at Pueblo Grande, albeit this thing's got maybe one of the most fantastically preserved specimens of that type of architecture around. This looks like there might be a museum in here. Let's go see if we can find some more red on buff. There's more of that same style of pottery we've been seeing all day long. So beautiful. I think this is a rendition of the Great House we're going to be viewing outside in its prime. Here's a photo of the Great House we're going to see as it appeared in the 1800s before they had any kind of stabilization work done to it. I think these are just maps of all the various compounds and ball courts in this area. And if you look here, I think this is a depiction of the Great House. So what I'm expecting to see here are the remnants of the Great House, as well as just the whole compound, and you can actually see a lot of walls here. Already it seems like a little bit better defined than what we saw at Pueblo Grande, at least for the archaeological remains we saw there today. Okay, and here we go, confirming what I've been saying all day. We've been referring to these people more and more as the Ancestral Sonoran Desert People. Just wow. This is quite something. I think they were saying inside that this thing was 4 stories tall. This sign is, talks about how these ruins have been well known for a while to us Westerners back into the 1800s, but in the 1870s when railroads finally came out to this area and people started coming in here, they of course started scratching their names and things, and vandalism began. But thank goodness our federal government has decided to protect this today. As you can see, if they didn't, you see the state of the rest of this stuff. So that's why they built this gigantic awning to protect what remains, and I'm so glad they did. Even the awning's an impressive piece of architecture. I like the way the sign here describes it. If you were here about 700 years ago, you'd smell the smell of foods, smell smoke, hear kids playing, dogs barking, because these people had dogs that they domesticated. So it would have been an area of bustling activity. I heard this was kind of a hub of trade for these people also when I was doing some research. Okay, so this morning we started with petroglyphs, some etching on walls, and kind of made our way up to this. So you can really see maybe the height, one might argue, of what this culture was able to achieve. Oh, wow. So if those are the original walls, like here, if that's an example of how smoothed out this would have been, wow, this would have been amazing to see. You see all like the holes where the beams would have been for the various floors in here? I see at least maybe 3 levels worth of that. Here's another view inside, and we're gonna do another pass around because I saw some 1800s graffiti from the 1870s back there, but the tour group is kind of following me around here. But also makes you wonder too, you see, I don't think that was the work of the Hohokam. And there's definitely modern concrete, you know, in different places here. So there definitely has been some reconstruction, of course, but a lot of this stuff I reckon is still in its original state. Here's another rendition of perhaps what it would have been like, or what life would have been like inside of this. You'd have to think that a lot of these etchings, the graffiti was done, you know, maybe in the 1800s or the early 1900s. I don't know when they started protecting this. I'm sure there's something on a sign around here, but I'm just scanning, looking for 1800 dates. We'll go back and I'll show you the one that I already saw. Okay, so I mentioned earlier that I read something that somebody thought this was a major trade center, but this is also stating that they don't really know. Why did they build it? And one other guess might be it might be an ancient astronomical observatory. You know, as we've learned, you know, with other cultures like the ancestral Puebloans, they really were into the sky in different events like solstices, so they knew when to plant their crops and they understood all that stuff. So it's not inconceivable that maybe this was some kind of a observatory, because this would have been extremely important to these people as farmers, perhaps the Mac Daddy of all southwestern farmers. And right there is some 1871 graffiti. It's hard to read it, but it looks like a J.W. Ward left his mark here in the Old West. Man, yeah, I've just been used to seeing things like Sears Cay. I always talk about that one on this show, Agua Fria now, and all of those kind of structures, and just seeing the stone walls. We never get to see stuff from the ancestral Sonoran Desert people like on this scale and preserved like that, to really see what it would have looked like with the outer veneers. All we see usually are the internal stone structures. And I just wouldn't have thought that this was gonna have such an impression on me. But as I always say, got another thing here that exceeds my expectations. As we sit here and admire this magnificent ruin, I think we're gonna part ways today, and I hope you enjoyed our tour of these ancestral Sonoran Desert People ruins and markings across the Phoenix metro area. Now you know what was right beneath your feet.